Well, I hope everyone remembered in here. Did you two remember what we'd read last week? The rules and regulations for going to Shanti Ashram. And Guru Das has left. He has changed his mind and decided to resign. Guru Das left the ashram he so much loved on February 2nd, 1906. A Charles Sacker, a member of the society, took his place. Now, if you're following along with your book at home, it's on page 137, number 3. According to the minutes of the society, Swami Trigunatita planned to take a group of students to the ashram on May 2nd of 1906, but because of the disastrous earthquake and fire that hit San Francisco on April 18 of that year, the trip was postponed. The Society's minutes for October 28 read, Swami Trigunatita announced after his evening lecture that a trip to Shanti Ashram would be taken by several members of the Vedanta Society with him and Swami Prakashananda, who had arrived in San Francisco on August 2nd, that they would leave San Francisco for the ashram on the 30th of October and stay there until the 28th of November. Then they would return to the city. A meeting of the students going to the ashram took place in Swami Trigunatita's office after the lecture. Those present were Swami Trigunatita, Swami Prakashananda, Mrs. Peterson, Mrs. Wolberg, Mrs. Petrie, Miss McComas, Mr. Howrath, and Mr. Brown. Swami Trigunatita held the meeting in order to inform the students who were going to join the yoga class at the ashram that what was expected of them while there. He said he would expect implicit obedience and harmony. With the addition of Ujjala, who we know attended this session at the ashram, the 6 students mentioned above appear to have been the only ones who went that year. For their benefit, Swami Trigunatita wrote out in his own hand some more rules and regulations, detailed and stringent, which Mr. Allen copied into his notebook. Reading this long list of rules, one finds that without Guru Das, there was no chanting of Om to charm the students awake. Instead, there were whistles. A 2-minute string of 4-second-long whistles not only woke the retreatants at 5 a.m. that year, but various combinations of long and short blasts punctuated every detail of the daily program. One figuration, for instance, summoned the students to the morning yoga class. Another set them walking toward the yoga class. A third told them that they should be in the yoga class. Whistles blew as well for the afternoon and evening yoga classes, for the 2 meals, and for retirement. In his rules, Swami Trigunatita also enumerated duties for ladies and duties for men, all of which were so arranged that the men and the women never ran into one another, and everything presumably went like clockwork. Certainly it went in strict accord with the dining room clock, of which Swami Prakashananda was in charge, and by which everyone twice daily set his or her own watch. In a parenthesis, by what standard the dining room clock was set, one cannot guess. In addition to these daily rules, Swami Trigunatita drew up a set of more relaxed general rules, which read in part, every Tuesday, Mail Day, there will be a holiday from cooking. Yoga classes, everyone can go out into the woods with a sandwich if they like. Bread, butter, fruits, nuts, and crackers on dining room table. Whoever cooks on Tuesday will put edibles on dining room table at 9 a.m. Those that want earlier help themselves. One night, all of the students will go in a body with the Swami sometime before midnight, at least for 3 hours in the woods. Another night, all students will enjoy a bonfire dhuni in the open air, and Swamis will be reciting and chanting mantras. Students will be meditating. This will be for one whole night. Swamis will be cooking on those 2 days. The day of the dhuni fire and of the midnight jaunt, if any of the cooking parties be ill on their duty days, they will notify the Swamis and they will do the cooking for them. One day, 24 hours, every student, including the Swamis, is expected to observe the vow of silence separately in one's own tent, meditating and praying for 24 hours and fasting for 36 hours, from after previous supper till before next breakfast, in case of emergency. Dhirananda or Swami can violate the rule in case of particular illnesses. Students will notify the Swami of inability to at previous supper table. All these rules and the shrill imperative whistles that actuated them were only the bones of the ashram retreats, giving them structure and holding them together. Whatever the students' emotional ups and downs, likes and dislikes may have been, once a retreatant had arrived at the yoga class or at a meal on time, the hours spent under Swami Trigunatita's ever-vigilant eyes were hours into which years of spiritual growth were concentrated. True, there was tension. The Swami missed no chance to correct the failings of this one or that one with a sharp rebuke or a sarcastic jab. Mealtime, Kara French recalled, was Swami's opportunity for sarcasms. We were fake yogis, bogus ascetics, and some of our pet personal hobbies and characteristics were held up to ridicule. Then again, a harmless joke could be told at someone's expense to relieve the tension. But his most severe rebukes were reserved for those students whom he most prized. Once at the ashram with Swami Trigunatita, Edith Allen recalled in a letter to Ujjala, some of the students got jealous of a few of us who had special work to do, though nothing was said. At the dinner table, Swami said, "You know Swami has pets. What have I for my pets? Blows. Nothing but blows." He missed nothing. Here also, as in San Francisco, we discovered that Swami was aware of everything said or done. He would bring into his remarks at table current happenings, not possibly perceived or heard of by his outer senses. But these times, when scoldings were pointed and the very air grew tense, were offset by the Swami's joviality at other times, when sternness was not called for, or when he was not in a deeply spiritual mood beyond ordinary speech and laughter. He could turn into a most convivial and loving friend, attentive to everyone's need, and this despite the illness and pain of the body that he almost constantly felt. Outside of the classes and meals, he was full of fun. Mr. Brown noted, and of constant cheerfulness in order to relax any tension which might result from the unaccustomed hours and mode of living. He also saw that all received sufficient exercise according to the individual need and capacity. Indeed, Swami Trigunatita had nothing in mind but the spiritual welfare of the students. And for the sake of that, as well as out of sheer concern, he was careful about their physical and mental health. Life was simple at the ashram, almost Spartan. There was, of course, no electricity or running water. The living quarters, tents at first, were without frills, in keeping with ashram life. The men did not shave, and the dress of both women and men was as plain as possible. An overall rule that the Swami laid down was that the strict vegetarianism. To make this rule clear to all the students and for visitors to the ashram, Mr. Brown would relate, he, the Swami, had a sign painted and placed on the entrance gate, stating that no form of flesh food was allowed on the ashram grounds. Also, that firearms and shooting were prohibited. But despite the hardships of living in this remote cow country wilderness, burning hot in summer, uncomfortably cold in the late fall, the students loved the place. Swami Trigunatita's dominant presence, the palpable vibrance of Swami Turiyananda's legacy, the routine of meditation and scriptural classes, all this made Shanti Ashram a heaven for those who could immerse themselves in its atmosphere. And most of the students could do so, or they would not have come. Even the sometimes harsh disciplines of spiritual effort became, in time, natural and welcome to them. Exactly when the Swami started rigorously separating the sexes at Shanti Ashram's community gathering is not certain, but he must have done so early on. For Guru Das commented upon the practice. Of course, he said many years later, even before, during Swami Trigunanda's time, men and women used to live in separate tents. There were separate bathrooms for the two sexes. But the Swami affected separate dining tables also. We used to make fun of it. The only years during which Swami Trigunatita took a group of students to the ashram when Guru Das was there were 1903 and 1904. So, unless Guru Das was speaking from hearsay, the pattern was clearly set. Mr. Brown, however, places the seating of men and women at separate dining tables in 1910, and very likely this is correct. Earlier, both sexes sat at one dining table, there being only one in the dining room, with a wide empty space separating them. There was, in fact, no communication between men and women at any time. All requests by the women for such things as wood or water came to the men through the Swami. Chit-chat between the sexes had no place at all. It was a rule rigorously enforced. Although this monastic observance in a mixed religious community had its American precedents, notably among the contemporary Shakers, many of the students, accustomed as they were to free, casual, and innocent mingling of men and women in almost all social contexts, at first felt this rule to be exceedingly unnatural, unnecessary, and foreign. To Mrs. French, at least, the Swami explained. He said it was not a question of East or West. It was a matter of spirituality. If one wanted realization, whatever one's religion might be, the methods might vary, but the training given by a realized teacher would be the same. The root of Maya is the sex relation, he stated, explaining that sex relation does not consist in the gross form only. That a whole subtle satisfaction is often derived from conversation, companionship, from a handshake, or even a glance. The Swami himself obeyed the rule, never going near the women's tents or cabins. Only once I remember seeing him do so, Cara French wrote in her reminiscences, and then he passed quickly by without speaking. The practice extended to a discipline laid down for his women students. They were not allowed to look directly at him, even during, or perhaps particularly during, the classes, the meals, and the hours of private instruction. At mealtimes, This held good also for the men, who were to look straight ahead of themselves and not at the Swami, who might very well be at that time be verbally or vigorously chastising one or another. After the first year, mealtimes were not occasions for jollity and general conversation. But as said earlier, outside of classes and meals, the Swami's relationship with his students was informal and jovial. At times a holiday was declared. This year, 1906, for instance, there were 4 days set aside during the month, 2 for men and 2 for women, for outings to see a little of the countryside, and always after a dooney fire when the students had presumably stayed awake all night, practicing meditation and jopam, there was a holiday. On those days there were no classes, walks could be taken or not, food was laid out on the dining tables and could be taken for a picnic by the women if no men were in sight, and vice versa. Thus the strain was relieved, nor did the Swami fail to notice and care for the needs of each individual, pushing each to his or her limit, but no further. He was constantly vigilant in this respect. We have heard, for instance, from both Frank Rodahamel and Swami Trigunatita of the solitary retirement experiment, which took place during the November retreat in 1903. It was mentioned again in the ashram rules for 1906. But whether or not this experiment was continued during the subsequent years, we do not know. For in the memoirs and letters available to us, it is not spoken of again. It is possible that for many of the students it was too taxing a tapasya, particularly in the stifling summers. Remember, they had to do it inside their own tents, and when it's out there in that valley and 110 degrees, inside a tent would be like pass-out time. And that Swami Trigunatita allowed only a few of the retreatants to undertake it, or possibly he discontinued it altogether. At the present writing, we can be sure only that whatever tapasya the students of Shanti Ashram practiced, the Swami hovered over them like a mother, father, and guru combined. Any questions about anything we've read so far? We'll go on, if not. In 1909, the retreat was held in June, a month of intense heat. 18 students went that year, 8 men, including the 2 young sons of the Wolbergs, and 10 women. The little meditation cabin was crowded for yoga class, and someone, possibly Dhirananda, who among the students took the lead in most things, suggested that the class be held outdoors under a large oak tree that had been emblazoned in white paint with a Sanskrit Om. Accordingly, Swami Trigunatita had a large platform built under the tree, and henceforth the 3-day daily yoga classes were held there. The wake-up call, by now a bugle instead of a whistle, was set for 3:55 a.m. instead of 5 a.m., as in the 1906, and there was a joy and beauty in this pre-dawn waking. In the words of Mr. Brown, the students cheerfully complied with the early rising rule, and at that early hour dimly outlined forms could be seen moving through the darkness from the separate quarters of the men and women toward the large oak tree. The men remained standing at a distance with their backs to the platform until the women had arrived and were seated. Men and women alike seated themselves in Oriental fashion on the platform facing the Swami, the women in front, the men in back. The platform ran north and south. Swami sat facing the north on a strong table elevated above the platform with a small desk arrangement in front of him, on which was the book he was reading that morning. In 1909, the texts were The Following of Christ, and on alternate mornings, The Little Flowers of St. Francis, all lighted by a tall kerosene lamp shaded from the eyes of the students on the platform below. Swami opened the service, as all other classes in the ashram, with the chanting of the Gayatri. Repeating this for some time to induce harmonious conditions, then came a half-hour's meditation, followed by reading of the scriptures with comment. As Swami sat on the raised seat chanting and reading or absorbed in meditation, his presence emanated an atmosphere of calm and holiness, which pervaded the hearts and minds of all, bringing them under its benign influence. Sitting there, revealed by the dim light of the lamp against the background of the deep shadows of the great oak tree, he made a picture never to be forgotten by those whom the Mother's grace had brought to this holy place. Shortly before sunrise, Swami gave rhythmic breathing exercises to satisfy the desire of a number, but strongly cautioned against their use without his permission. As he gave the exercises, Swami asked the students to observe that during meditation, the breath regulated itself without any help whatsoever. If our minds are pure, this would be the natural state of breathing. As the sun flashed its first beams of light into the watching vision, Swami chanted an invocation, after which he asked the class again to close their eyes in meditation and endeavor to visualize the sun rising through the Sushumna Canal, stopping at the different centers as far as the center at the bridge of the nose. Then all arose, the men retiring to a distance again, while the women took the path to their quarters. When they had reached their section, the women stood and sang a very beautiful song, composed by Mrs. Peterson, Dhirananda, O Divine Mother, we are thy children. After which the men sang a selected devotional song, and all separated to take up their various duties. We'll read just a little more. The evening yoga class was equally impressive. To quote from the 1909 monastery notes, which incidentally were kept by the same E.C. Brown who wrote the above, and which in many respects, being written on the spot, were more accurate than his later reminiscences. He says, the evening service began at 8 p.m. with meditation as usual for half an hour. At 8:30, reading from the sayings of Sri Ramakrishna with explanation, closed at 9. The evening meetings were among the most appreciated. The silence of the darkness and the sound of the voice of the Swami, the only light, the lantern he read by, while on other evenings, a beautiful moonlight all around and shining through the tree above onto the platform. All these made the lessons more impressive and left a deep and lasting feeling in the heart. The service ended at 9, and by 10 o'clock, nearly all retired. And at these classes, whatever the time of day, the Swami was as remote and impersonal as the snow-capped Sierra far beyond the eastern range of the hills, Cara French wrote in her reminiscences. In the ashram rules for 1906, Swami Trigunatita had written, one night all the students will go in a body with the Swamis for some time before midnight, at least for 3 hours in the woods. Cara French was the only student to write such a thing, of such an outing. She fails to mention the date, but very likely it was the year when the retreat was held in the summer and the nights were cool, not freezing. Let us say, then, 1909. Of this occasion, she wrote, once, some of the men, led by Swami, spent several hours far beyond the eastern boundary of the ashram property. Then came the announcement that at the close of the evening class, we were to have blankets or quilts outside our cabins, ready at a given signal to follow, at a proper distance, when Swami set forth with the men. Having explored and found a suitable spot for us, we were to go on pilgrimage, sleep on the ground, wherefore the quilts. Accordingly, at the signal, we started to follow the trail set by the men until we reached a comparatively clear space, some distance from the ashram. The Swami called back to us to halt while he went on a few hundred yards with the men, but still within hailing distance. The men built a huge bonfire, and the hours till midnight were filled with songs, first from the woman's side, then taken up by the men alternately. Some of the women rolled up in their quilts at once and went to sleep. Most of them slept after midnight, but 2 or 3 remained awake throughout the night, not willing to miss any of the experience out under the stars. We sang softly, then became silent. And I think we'll end there because we'll go on to 1910. Now, every year in San Francisco, the San Francisco Vedanta Society still has a retreat at Shanti Ashram. And I believe it's going to be in April? I'm sorry?
She said something different.
Third weekend of April, she said.
When is it happening, Durga?
April.
April.
It's always been the last Saturday.
Okay. Usually are always the last Saturday in April. And the convent goes out with women devotees. The men go out and shape up the cabins and everything. The women go out and clean up, get everything tidied up. And then do they spend the night out there anymore?
The men, I don't know anymore. The men used to go out for a whole week.
Okay, Swami Chidramananda says the men used to go up for a whole week and stay there getting everything prepared. But it's really one of the most beautiful, serene places I think you can go. It's gorgeous. So you check with Vedanta Society of Northern California to see when it is and if you can attend. The last weekend of April. So it's coming right up. Now, any questions or... Yes, John?
Just a comment. This guy Trigunatita sounds like a nutcase. I mean, the discipline and all is not at all like Ramakrishna or even Holy Mother, who were very much self-disciplined. It just doesn't sound right and nothing like what Vedanta seems to be, in my opinion.
Well, that's good. Because they really do have quite strict rules for behavior. It depends on the place and the circumstance. But in India, a lot of these things are still very much in practice. I know that in Belur Mat, guests can come into the monastery now at 4 a.m, and they can meditate in the main temple of Belur until 5, at which point they leave. The women guests, everyone leave, because they need time to be monks. In the West, especially in Southern California, John, Swami Prabhavananda set the whole precedent as we were a family. And he was, Sister Lalita, one of the Mead sisters, was the one who brought him down to Hollywood. And it was her home in the Hollywood Hills that became the center. So they lived as a family in those homes. They had other buildings, but everyone was at the same table. They were all, brothers and sisters. They had everyone. It was the kind of teaching where you looked on the people you lived with. Women looked on them as brother, son, or father. Men looked at the women as sisters, mothers, daughters. There was conversation because that is the cultural habit of the West. It wasn't in India.
Well, yeah.
Even in Ramakrishna's time, when you read the Gospel and you read about Holy Mother, you notice that the women are never in the same room with the men.
Yeah, and let's stop that there for a second. I'm not talking. The Shakers, by the way, disappeared as a cult because they didn't reproduce. I'm very familiar with them in Pennsylvania. I'm never talking about the 4 o'clock in the morning of the man-woman thing. Putting these kids in tents that were sweltering is downright unhealthy. This guy had some bad habits, did some bad things.
No, Ramakrishna used to go and get up all the young men that he deemed his future monastics. He would get them up at midnight and send them to the Panchavati to meditate.
That's great, but he didn't send them in dangerous circumstances and have all these insane rules. Plus the fact he was a nice guy.
Well,
This Trigunatita does not sound like a particularly attractive religious figure.
This is a very particular situation. These people were on a month-long spiritual retreat to intensify their practice. That was the whole purpose of it. They were not living there like they did when Swami Trigunatita was there.
Well,
And when
I've been on things like that too that were very dangerous, but we had to do what we had to do. This sounds exceedingly and do you buy this guy's actions? Would you put up with anybody like that?
I get up at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah, that has nothing to do. That's not what I'm talking about. I get up at 4 in the morning every day too.
Yep.
But in terms of
It
having
all
someone,
depends upon what our intention is.
yeah,
If our intention is to experience austerity and strengthen our spiritual practice for 1 month or 3 weeks, and it's our choice to be there, then yes, I would put up with it.
it would be my choice to leave that place and probably flatten that guy.
Well, that's your choice.
That's right.
Yeah. And we all have our choices, but you have to understand some people, as I put it myself, want the fast track.
Well, masochists
And the
are
fast track takes a little more intensity than the slow track.
Yeah.
And I mean, all things are said in the name of religion, but we choose which ones we follow.
I've got a German belt buckle from World War II on my collection upstairs. It says,
Well, John, that's entirely different. That's not religion, and we're not talking about that. And even those are choices we make, where we are going to put our minds, what we are going to concentrate on.
The thing
If
about
we're
it
going
is,
to
too, they kept on
concentrate-
coming back,
I'm sorry?
right? The thing about it is, they kept on coming back too, right?
Yeah, they kept coming back.
people do
As
that.
they said, they get a lot out of it. Ujjwala, who was at these meetings and at these retreats, ended her days in Southern California. I don't think she resented any part of it, because the intangible spirituality that you get from a direct disciple of Ramakrishna, no matter what his personality is, and every one of them had a different personality and a different way of organizing. I mean, there was the palpable spirituality that emanated from them, as they say in their writings, no matter what. Sure, the rules were like horrendous, but as someone once told us who stayed here, the convent's good training for the army. We have a very regulated life, and it's not bad. It's good, but
And that was a very different era. You know, people were so different back then. They would put up with that.
yeah.
They liked rules, yeah.
people want some austerity in their life many times. When we, it is truly choices we make in our life on where we're going with our goal in mind. And no one makes the same choices. Not one person does. Some people, they wouldn't put up with that for 2 seconds. But other people want it. Now, I have something else to say. Saturday is Karma Yoga Day, and according to the weather report, it's probably going to be really, really hot, so we'll look for indoor things to do. We'll meet at the convent, down in the convent, 9:15, and discuss what jobs we're going to be doing. We'll try and keep it as cool as possible, and all have lunch together at 1 o'clock. Saturday evening at 5 o'clock, Swami Trigunatita will do the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And Sunday, the 22nd, Swami Mahayogananda will give the talk, Meditation, the First Steps. Everyone's welcome to all of these things. So, any other questions? Not, let's say questions, not debates on whether it's right or wrong. Just a question. Okay. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.